to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where your mind can soften, your breath can slow, and the day can quietly loosen its grip. Tonight you'll drift into a wide meadow full of sheep where moonlight moves like silk across grass, and every sound is gentle enough to follow into sleep. Settle your body into a comfortable place. Let your shoulders sink as if they are remembering how to rest. Unclench the small hidden places you've been holding tight. The jaw, the forehead, the hands. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, whether they are open or closed. And let your breathing become unhurried. Inhale, as if you're breathing in calm air cooled by evening. Exhale, as if you're letting out anything that doesn't need to come with you. Feel the surface beneath you supporting every part of your weight. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to solve anything. You are simply here, and that is enough. Imagine a soft hush spreading through the space around you like a blanket being drawn up. The world outside can continue in its own way, far off and muffled. Here there is only quiet, and the promise of a place where time slows down until it feels like it's barely moving at all. Now, with each gentle breath, begin to sense a change in the air. Cooler, cleaner, touched with the scent of wild herbs. The faintest sound of night arrives, not sharp or sudden, but like distant music heard through a closed window. Your mind does not need to chase it. Your mind can simply float. And somewhere beyond the edge of waking, a meadow is waiting. In that meadow, night moved with a patient grace. The sky was deep and open, scattered with stars that seemed to blink slowly, as if they were sleepy too. A pale moon hung above the land, not bright in a harsh way, but tender, spilling a quiet light that softened every shape it touched, of dew on the blades, catching moonlight of dew on the blades, catching moonlight and turning it into tiny sparks. A narrow stream curled along the meadow's edge, whispering to itself as it went, weaving small stories into the darkness. Wildflowers rested with their heads bowed. Some held the last traces of daylight in their petals, as if they had saved a little warmth. Others had closed entirely, content in the cool. The air smelled of clover, sweet and green, and of lavender tucked among the grasses. Even the breeze seemed careful here, moving as if it didn't want to disturb anything. A path, barely more than a suggestion, wandered down from the hills into the meadow. It was made by feet that had passed this way many times, by hooves, by bare soles, by the light pads of animals who traveled softly. The path didn't hurry, it didn't lead anywhere with urgency. It simply wandered like a thought that doesn't need an answer. On this night, a traveler came down that path. The traveler was not in a rush. There was no heavy burden on the traveler's back, no sharp worry in the traveler's step. The traveler had walked through the fading of day, through the dimming of colors, into the calmer world that arrives when the sun has said goodnight. The traveler's cloak was the color of twilight, and it moved quietly, brushing the tops of grasses without bending them too much. The traveler paused at the meadow's edge, as if listening. Passing over hills, the soft movement of passing over hills, the soft movement of grass settling back after a breeze. Somewhere far off, an owl offered a single low call and then went quiet again, as though even it was content to let the night be still. The traveler stepped into the meadow. The ground was springy beneath the traveler's boots, thick with living green. Each step released the scent of crushed clover. The traveler breathed it in and felt something inside loosen, a knot, untied without effort. And then, as the traveler moved farther in, the meadow revealed what it was holding. Sheep. They were scattered across the open grass, like little pieces of cloud that had drifted down and decided to stay. Their wool caught moonlight and turned it into a soft glow. Some sheep were standing, heads lowered, to graze slowly as if tasting the night itself. Others were lying down, their bodies tucked into themselves in rounded shapes, peaceful and warm. There were lambs too, smaller shadows, nestled close to their mothers, their ears flicking gently as they dreamed. A few lifted their heads, blinking in the moonlight, calm rather than startled, as though the traveler's presence felt familiar to the meadow. The traveler stopped again, smiling in that quiet way. A person smiles when something is too soothing to speak about. In the center of the meadow, there was an old tree. It wasn't tall in a proud, reaching way. It was wide and welcoming. Its trunk was thick and twisted, and its branches spread out like arms open for a slow embrace. The leaves whispered softly to each other, and every now and then a leaf would let go and drift down, turning lazily before settling on the grass. Beneath the tree, the ground was worn smooth by the gentle habit of resting creatures. The traveler walked toward it, careful to step around sleeping sheep, careful not to make the grasses swish too loudly. The sheep barely reacted. They continued being sheep, breathing softly, chewing slowly, living in the steady rhythm that sheep always seem to know. Near the tree's roots, a lantern sat on a stone. It was not lit. It didn't need to be. The moonlight was enough, and the darkness here was friendly. The traveler sat down beneath the tree, leaning back against the trunk. The bark was cool, but not unpleasant. It held the day's warmth deep inside, like a secret it didn't mind sharing. The traveler watched the sheep. A ewe stood nearby, her face pale in the moonlight, her eyes dark and gentle. She blinked slowly at the traveler, then returned to grazing with a soft, steady patience. The sound of her nibbling was quiet, almost like rain tapping faintly on a window. The traveler's breath began to match the meadow's pace, in and out, slow and easy. The mind, usually quick to chase and tumble, began to settle like a feather falling through still air. Time passed in that slow, kind way it sometimes does at the edge of sleep. The stream whispered, the leaves whispered, the sheep breathed. And then something else happened. Something small, almost unnoticeable, like a subtle shift in the way the moonlight lay on the grass. A shape moved along the meadow's far side. Not a shadow that threatened, but one that belonged. It moved with the calm confidence of a creature who knew every dip in the ground, every hidden stone, every soft place where grass grew thick. A shepherd appeared. The shepherd was not young and not old in any sharp way. The shepherd looked like someone shaped by seasons and softened by nights. The shepherd carried a staff that was polished smooth by many hands and many walks. A simple cloak draped over the shepherd's shoulders, and it moved like a slow wave in the breeze. At the shepherd's side padded a dog. The dog's coat was dark, but the eyes were bright, reflecting starlight in small glints. The dog moved without hurry, pausing now and then to sniff the air, to glance at the sheep, to confirm that all was well. The shepherd walked through the flock with unspoken familiarity. Sheep lifted their heads and then lowered them again, satisfied. Lambs shifted in their sleep, pressing closer to warm bodies. The dog circled once, twice, then lay down in the grass with a sigh that sounded almost human. The shepherd saw the traveler beneath the tree and approached with the same calm. When the shepherd spoke, the voice was quiet and low, as if it had learned to speak gently so the night would not be startled. "You found the meadow," the shepherd said, and the words felt less like a question and more like a welcome. The traveler nodded. The shepherd sat down on the other side of the tree, as though the tree had been waiting for both of them. The staff rested against the trunk, the shepherd's hands folded loosely in a lap. There was no urgency in the posture, no restless energy, only ease. The traveler and the shepherd sat together in companionable silence. The meadow did not ask them to fill it with conversation. The meadow was already full, with moonlight, with breathing, with the slow life of sheep. After a while, the shepherd spoke again, as if remembering something pleasant. "This meadow has been here longer than most stories," the shepherd murmured. "Not because it is grand, not because it demands to be noticed, only because it knows how to rest." The traveler listened. The shepherd continued, words flowing like the stream. "Some places are busy places. They gather footsteps and voices and bright lights. They pull the mind outward into plans and worries and noise. But this meadow," the shepherd's gaze moved over the sheep, "this meadow pulls the mind inward, like a tide coming in. It returns everything, to what is simple. The traveler's eyes drifted over the flock again, and it was true. The sheep did not seem to carry the day's heaviness. They did not seem to hold grudges or concerns. They lived in the present moment with a softness that felt contagious. A breeze moved through, and the grasses leaned together, then stood up again. A ripple of sound ran across the meadow, a quiet, whispering wave. The shepherd lifted a hand and let the breeze pass through the fingers, as if feeling the texture of the air. "Breathe with them," the shepherd said softly, and nodded toward the sheep. The traveler watched the nearest sheep, the rise and fall of woolly sides, slow and steady, a breath in, a breath out. Nothing forced, nothing held, just a rhythm that had always been there. The traveler's own breath began to mirror it even more. The dog, half asleep, thumped its tail once as if approving of this peaceful moment. The shepherd's eyes turned upward to the stars. "Do you see how the sky is not rushing either?" the shepherd asked. "Stars don't hurry. They keep their places. They shine. They rest in their shining." The traveler followed the shepherd's gaze. The sky looked endless. The stars looked patient. A thin cloud drifted across the moon like gauze, softening it further, making its light even gentler. And then, as the traveler's attention returned to the meadow, something curious became clear. The sheep were not all the same. Of course, sheep are sheep. Wool and ears and soft eyes, gentle hooves in grass. But each had a small difference, a quiet personality written in posture and movement. One sheep, a little apart from the others, stood with its head tilted, as if listening to music nobody else could hear. Another sheep, larger, moved with a slow dignity, as though it carried the calm of an entire hillside. A lamb rolled slightly in its sleep and made a tiny sound, like a sigh of contentment, then fell silent again. The traveler's mind, which could so easily fill itself with thoughts, chose instead to observe these small, soothing details. The mind became like the moonlight itself, touching, resting, moving on. The shepherd watched the traveler's face and smiled gently, a smile barely visible in the dimness, but felt nonetheless. "There is a kind of magic here," the shepherd said, voice low. "Not the loud kind, not the kind that flashes and demands attention. A quieter magic, the sort that arrives when you stop trying to hold the world in your hands." The traveler leaned back against the tree, letting the bark support the spine. The tree felt steady, ancient, calm. The shepherd's hand rested on the grass, fingers lightly brushing a clover leaf. "Long ago," the shepherd murmured, "someone planted this tree with a wish. Not a wish for treasure, not a wish for power, a wish for peace, a wish that anyone who came here could set down what they were carrying, even if only for a while." The traveler imagined that moment, hands pressing a small sapling into the earth, a whispered hope tucked into the soil. The traveler imagined the tree growing season after season, learning the language of wind and rain and sun, learning how to hold stillness in its branches. The shepherd continued. The wish took root. It spread through the grass. It drifted into the wool of the sheep. It settled into the stream's voice. The traveler listened to the stream again, and it did seem like a lullaby. Not a song with words, but a melody of water over stone, repeating softly until it became part of the mind's background. The sheep shifted gently as they grazed. Their hooves made small, muffled sounds. A bell somewhere in the flock chimed faintly with a movement, then went quiet again. It was the kind of sound that made the world feel safely watched over. The shepherd leaned back too, shoulder to tree, mirroring the traveler's posture. Two quiet figures under a wide canopy, surrounded by wool and moonlight. The dog sighed again and settled its chin onto its paws. The meadow seemed to deepen in softness. Even the shadows looked plush, like folds in dark fabric. A long moment passed. Then the shepherd spoke with a thoughtful gentleness. Some travelers come here with minds full of noise, the shepherd said. They sit down and their thoughts keep marching, plans and memories and worries, all of it clattering around like pots in a kitchen. The traveler's face remained calm, but the shepherd's words felt familiar, like the shepherd had described something the traveler had known before. But the meadow is patient, the shepherd continued. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand that thoughts stop. It simply offers something steadier. The shepherd nodded toward the sheep again. The flock does not fight the night. It belongs to the night. Each breath they take is an acceptance. Each slow chew is a reminder. There is time. There is enough. The traveler watched a sheep lift its head, ears turning as if catching the shepherd's words, then lower it again. Another sheep took a few slow steps, careful not to bump a sleeping lamb. The flock seemed like a moving blanket, soft, warm, and alive. The traveler's eyelids grew heavier. The shepherd's voice, low and even, continued like the stream, like the breeze in the leaves. In the daytime, the shepherd said, sheep gather sunlight in their wool. They carry warmth without even knowing they're doing it. And at night, that warmth becomes comfort. It spreads. It invites sleep. The traveler imagined the wool holding tiny memories of sun, golden, gentle, stored deep in fibers. Now, in the cool night, that stored warmth became a quiet offering. A moth fluttered past, pale and slow, circling the tree. Once before, drifting away toward the wildflowers. The air was cool but not cold. It wrapped around the traveler like a soft shawl. The shepherd's staff caught a sliver of moonlight along its smooth surface. The shepherd spoke again. There is another thing the meadow knows. It knows how to count without thinking. The traveler's eyes opened a little more at that, curious. The shepherd smiled softly, sensing the curiosity. Not in the way of numbers, the shepherd said gently, but in the way of repetition. The mind loves repetition. The mind calms when it knows what comes next. A breath follows a breath. A step follows a step. A sheep follows another sheep along a path worn smooth by peace. The traveler relaxed again, the small spark of curiosity settling back into quiet. The shepherd's voice became even softer. "Look," the shepherd murmured, "how the flock moves when it moves." As if responding, a few sheep began to drift slowly toward the tree, not crowding, not pushing, simply wandering nearer. Their presence felt like the slow closing of a circle, like safety gathering itself around the traveler. A ewe lay down not far away, folding legs beneath her in a practiced, gentle motion. Her body became a rounded hill of wool. A lamb, half asleep, wobbled closer and tucked itself against her side. The lamb's head rested, its breathing quick at first, then slower. The traveler's heart softened at the sight. The shepherd watched too, and the gaze held a quiet affection. "They teach each other," the shepherd whispered. "The young learn calm from the old. The old remember tenderness because the young are near." The traveler let the image sink deep. A lamb leaning into warmth, the world safe enough to sleep in. The dog's ears twitched once, then relaxed again. The stream's voice continued, endlessly patient. The traveler's thoughts began to thin out like clouds dissolving. Instead of full sentences and plans, the mind held simple impressions: moonlight, wool, clover, the low voice of the shepherd. The shepherd leaned forward slightly and plucked a sprig of lavender from the grass. The shepherd rolled it gently between fingers, releasing the scent. The fragrance drifted in a small, sweet cloud. "Lavender helps the meadow remember its own quiet," the shepherd murmured, and tucked the sprig into the fold of the cloak. The traveler inhaled and imagined the scent as a color, soft purple drifting through the lungs, spreading calm into every corner. A faint, distant sound came from the hills, perhaps the far-off call of another owl, perhaps the settling of stones, perhaps the whisper of the night turning another page. It didn't matter what it was. It belonged to the background, and the background was kind. The shepherd spoke again, but the words were slower now, spaced out like stepping stones across a stream. "Sometimes," the shepherd said, "the meadow offers a dream." The traveler's mind, already drifting, accepted the idea without needing to understand it. "A dream," the shepherd continued, "that feels like walking through mist. You can let it happen. You do not have to chase it." The traveler's eyes closed for a moment, then opened again, heavy-lidded. The shepherd pointed, not sharply, but with a gentle motion of the chin, toward the far end of the meadow. There the moonlight pooled in a slightly brighter patch, as if the sky had poured an extra spoonful of silver onto the grass. In that patch of light, something shimmered, not a harsh glitter, but a soft radiance that pulsed slowly like breathing. The traveler watched, calm and curious. As the traveler watched, the shimmer resolved into something like a path, an almost invisible trail of brightness laid across the meadow. It wasn't made of stones or wood. It was made of light and dew and the faintest suggestion of dust, as if the stars had shed something delicate. And it had settled here. The sheep nearest the shimmering trail lifted their heads. They didn't startle. They simply became attentive, like an audience hearing a familiar melody begin. One sheep stepped onto the trail. Its hooves did not press the grass down. Instead, it seemed to glide slightly, as though the light carried it. The sheep moved forward slow and steady, head held comfortably low, ears relaxed. Another sheep followed, and another. Soon a small line of sheep was drifting along the moonlit path, their wool glowing softly. They moved with a rhythm that felt like a lullaby made visible. The traveler watched, mesmerized, and felt the mind quiet even more. Something about the gentle procession made thoughts slow down. The sheep moved like living clouds on a river of light. The shepherd spoke in a hush. "This is how the meadow sings," the shepherd murmured. "Not with words, with movement, with softness, with the way each creature trusts the next." The traveler's body, leaning against the tree, felt heavier, more supported. The dog lifted its head just enough to watch the glowing line, then rested again, satisfied. The sheep continued along the shimmering trail, circling slowly through the meadow. Their movement did not disturb the sleeping ones. It was as though the night itself guided their steps, careful and considerate. The traveler's breathing matched the pace. Slow, steady, easy. The shepherd's voice drifted in and out like a breeze. "Some people think counting sheep is about effort," the shepherd said softly, "but it's not. It's about surrendering to a gentle pattern, letting your mind follow something simple until it forgets to be sharp." The traveler watched the sheep pass. Wool, moonlight, soft hooves, quiet eyes. Each time one passed, the traveler's mind softened further, as if a hand were smoothing wrinkles out of fabric. The meadow felt like a cradle now. The tree was a steady spine. The grass was a blanket. The sheep were warm, floating thoughts. The shimmering trail grew fainter as the sheep completed their slow circle, as if it had done its work and could now rest too. The sheep, once they finished, returned to grazing or lying down, settling into the meadow's calm as naturally as water settling into a still pond. The traveler's eyes closed again, longer this time. The shepherd remained nearby, a quiet presence, like a lantern that doesn't need to be lit, because the very fact of its presence is comforting. The stream whispered, repeating its gentle song. The leaves whispered, a soft rustle like pages turning in a book that doesn't need to be finished. The sheep breathed, slow and steady, their bodies rising and falling in a soothing rhythm. The traveler drifted in that rhythm, sinking into it. Even the stars seemed to pulse with quiet, like distant hearts. The shepherd spoke less now. When the shepherd did speak, it was in small phrases, like warm stones placed on the ground. Safe, the shepherd murmured. Resting. Held. The traveler's mind accepted each word and then let it dissolve. The meadow held everything without asking anything in return. Somewhere close by, a lamb made a tiny sound, then fell silent again. The sound was soft enough to be part of a dream. The dog's breathing became deep, steady. The traveler's fingers relaxed, hands open. The traveler's shoulders sank further. The traveler's face softened, and the meadow, pleased, became even quieter, as if it were honoring the traveler's descent into sleep. The night grew stiller. The shepherd leaned back, eyes half closed, listening to the flock's gentle breathing. The traveler beneath the tree drifted deeper, thoughts now like faint wisps that barely formed before fading away. Moonlight continued to wash the meadow in soft silver. The stream's whisper became quieter in the traveler's awareness, not because it stopped, but because it blended into the background of comfort. The sheep rested, the lambs rested, the dog rested. The tree held everyone in its wide, patient presence, branches gently swaying like a slow lullaby. In the traveler's body, everything loosened. The breath moved easily. The heartbeat felt calm, steady, unhurried. The meadow did not change in any sudden way. It simply continued being what it was. A safe, peaceful place where the world becomes simple enough to sleep. The shepherd's voice, now very soft, floated once more, barely more than the air moving. "Let go," the shepherd whispered. "Let the meadow do the holding." And the traveler did. The traveler sank into the softness of grass and moonlight, into the quiet warmth of woolly nearness, into the gentle, repeating rhythm of breath. The thoughts that remained were not heavy. They were light as feathers. A hush wrapped around the traveler like a blanket. Everything slowed, everything softened, everything rested. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.